Emotions play a very important role in our life. And it's important to understand what happens to our emotions in the unenlightened state, on the path to enlightenment, following enlightenment, and with the process of Para-Bhakti. So today will be the first of the session on understanding emotion in Bhakti-Yoga, which is the path to Para-Bhakti. Brahma-bhuta or moksha, which is a way station along the way to Para-Bhakti. And finally, what happens to emotions at the level of Para-Bhakti. But first, I'd like to, discuss what emotion is. We all know what it is, but we've hardly tried to define what it is. But what really happens in emotion is that there are many theories of emotion. And not only there are many theories of emotion, but there are also many, shall we say, definitions. Indeed, the process of emotion has three phases. One phase is at the level of our consciousness. It's at the level of our thinking. The second phase is the physiological state which it brings about. When your heart starts beating faster, when your knees become weak, when your stomach feels funny, all of these. All of these are the result of certain changes that are taking place in the physiology of your body. So when we try to define emotion, we must understand that this definition of emotion is a subjective experience, a physiological response, and lastly, when we are in the grip of emotion, we have a behavioral response. So I'm repeating this for your benefit. There's a subjective experience which we feel in the mind, which is cognitive. There is a physiological response which takes place within your body, changes your blood flow, your digestion, your musculoskeletal system. And lastly, there is a behavioral response. But the definition I like best is that emotion is that which gives energy to your motion. When you're angry, you get a different kind of energy. When a mother who is otherwise physically incapable raises a boulder or a truck to free her child, that emotion of love which prompts her to become super strong is also indeed a manifestation of emotion. She has got some superior energy coming from somewhere else, and that energy comes from emotion. Even if you are frozen with fear, There is a lot of energy that goes into the being frozen with fear. Because just to keep your body from moving, your muscles have to be tense and held in that same position. And it requires a great deal of energy to do so. So this is one more definition of emotion. That emotion consists of the ability to add energy to motion. But it's very important to understand that our lives are colorful because of emotion. If you take away your emotion, you would have no human relationships. You would indeed be completely still, mild, and equanimous. And therefore, we need to understand what is it that emotion really is? Where does it come from? Who starts the emotion? Is it a reactive or is it proactive? The general consensus in most psychologists is that it's reactive, that somebody else presses your buttons and then emotions rage in you. Do you have someone in your life who presses the wrong buttons? Who presses the buttons of anger and irritation and resentment? Is there someone in your life who presses the buttons of fear? Or is there someone in your life who presses all the right buttons? The buttons of affection and love, togetherness. So, to understand this, we need to look at emotions a little more deeply. There was a biochemist and a neuroscientist by the name of Candace Pert. And Candace Pert was the discoverer or co-discoverer of the internal endogenous opioid. If you take opium or a derivative of opium and it has an impact on your mind and body, then that effect takes place because for that opium which you are taking externally, there is a corresponding match in receptor. So when the key fits into the lock and the key turns, the lock is activated. So when an external opioid is given to you and it acts on the receptors in your brain and body, what happens is that logic demands that if there's an external key, there must be an internal key as well. That every human being contains within them opioids. And these opioids, which are endogenous opioids, beginning of these was discovered by Candace Pert. And then she began thinking and speculating that these opioids, if they act endogenously, if they are there within you, what makes them work? Why do we feel happiness? Why do we feel bliss? Because of these endogenous opioids. Similarly, she thought that why do we feel fear? Why do we feel anger? Are these also not the result of endogenous substances that come from within your body? And she came to the conclusion that within the brain, the neurons, they release at the tip of their axons certain neuropeptides. And these neuropeptides are released in the body through the bloodstream, just like insulin is released and in the pancreas and then acts all over the body. So also these neuropeptides of emotion are released from the neurons in the brain and then absorbed in the bloodstream and released all over the body, act all over the body. So when your knees feel weak, when your stomach has a flutter, you feel there are butterflies in your stomach, when your chest feels constricted and you find it difficult to breathe, when you find there is a metallic taste in your mouth, indeed, when you find that you are perspiring and your hands are trembling, it is the same bunch of neuropeptides that are acting at different areas in your body. So, her conjecture was that emotions are the result of neuropeptides circulating in the body and released from the brain. So for a long time, the general consensus was that emotions are natural. Emotions occur naturally. In everybody, they occur naturally. And you can't do anything about them. That your emotions are provoked externally, and internally you only take cognizance and experience these emotions and behave according to them. A rather hopeless thought. You can't do anything about your emotions. So if you're drowning in depression, frozen by fear, burning with rage, or even bouncing with joy, expanding with love, all of these are prompted externally. Then came what was called the cognitive theory of emotion. And in this cognitive theory of emotion, they pointed out that all emotions arise from thought. And since all emotions arise from thought, if you can correct your thoughts and your beliefs, then truly there will be a transformation in your emotional regulation. Throughout history, throughout geographies, throughout demographies, wisdom is generally defined with emotional regulation as an integral part of wisdom. So we should be concerned, if we are interested in wisdom, to figure out how we can generate and regulate emotion. Because emotional regulation is a sign of wisdom. And we need to regulate our emotions. So having understood that emotion arises from, let's say, neuropeptides in the brain, that often emotions are infective, that emotions arise from thoughts, we come next to the idea that emotions arise not just from thoughts, but from past experiences. And not just from past experiences, but our correlation of the present event with past experiences. And we correlate the past event with present experience by telling ourselves a story. So we tell ourselves stories. And when we tell ourselves stories, these stories generate emotion. Oh, last time he did this, and now if I allow him to do this or get away with saying this, then next time this is what he's going to do. We're telling ourselves a story. And like this, we tell ourselves hundreds and thousands of stories all the time. But the beauty is, one, we tell ourselves these stories so fast, so fast, so fast that we are unaware that we are telling ourselves the story. And secondly, we are unconscious of the ragings of these stories within our mind. So, since the stories are so fast that we can't follow them, and since these stories occur at our unconscious level sometimes, we act according to karmic patterns of the past. And these karmic patterns of the past is what leads to destruction of relationships amongst friends, amongst parents and children, among siblings, among husbands and wives, that result in untold damage to the social structure. And indeed, there is a neuroscientist and psychologist by the name of Lisa Feldman Barrett. And Lisa Feldman Barrett has written a book, and it's a book for lay people, which you can read. How we create emotion. Which means that indeed we are creating our own emotion. We can't blame other people and say, you made me angry, you made me depressed, you frightened me. All these emotions are generated internally by you, never generated by external people or by external events. Once you realize this very, very, very important principle, you will now come to understand the secret of emotional regulation. The first path to emotional regulation on the path of Bhakti Yoga is to change the direction of your emotion. Take it away from people who you imagine are the cause of your emotions and direct these emotions towards God. If you are sad, direct that sadness to God. Weep and cry before God. If you are angry, direct those emotions towards God and let God see why you are angry. When you are filled with depression, direct this depression towards God. God, why have you done this to me? And wait for his answer. Remember, if you keep talking to God, then God will also talk to you. If you keep turning to God, God will also turn to you. Take one small step towards God, God will take a giant step towards you. You have to understand that everything that happens by the will of God. This is a very important philosophical principle on the path of Bhagavad Marg. In the Brihad-Haranyaka Upanishad, clearly states, Tena vina tranamapi na chalati. Not a blade of grass moves without God's consent. If a blade of grass bends on the left side, it is by God's consent. If it bends on the right side, it also bends by God's consent. Therefore, understanding that everything depends upon God and moves by His will, you must now surrender unto Him. When He has given you control over something, you must act. When it is beyond your control, direct your emotions towards God. Direct your frustration towards God. God will show you the way because He is situated in your heart. There's a story in the Puranas where the ancestor of Maharaj Yadu meets an Avdut, a renunciate, the highest levels, who walks around like a madman. And he beseeches him, please give me the wisdom that you have gathered. And this Avdut tells the ancestor of Maharaj Yadu that I have learnt what I have learnt from 24 gurus. And then, of course, he enumerates all the 24 gurus. One of the 24 gurus is the earth. And he says that the earth is also my guru because I have learnt from the earth the principle of tolerance. And how through that principle of tolerance I have attained equanimity despite how I am dishonored and treated badly. He says, I am living peacefully, covered with vegetation and forest, and men come and chop down the forest, uproot the stumps that are left, dig up the earth with their plows, plant seeds and harvest crops, sucking out all the natural nutrition that is there in my earth. And having taken out all the nutrition, they also dig deep wells, even bore wells, by which they reach the water table and they extract the water until I am dehydrated. When that is done, they rip apart the earth and do strip mining because they want the minerals from the earth. So to mine the minerals from the earth, they strip all the soil and they dig deep and leave gaping wounds from where they remove the minerals. And he says, even then they don't cease. Then they look for oil. And should they find oil, they dig even deeper so that they can find the oil that is there beneath the earth's surface. And he says, throughout this, I suffer. I am tortured and I suffer. But although I am tortured and I suffer great pain, I simply tolerate and endure all this without complaint, without hating anybody, without being angry with anybody, without fearing anybody, in perfect equanimity. And I do that because I am indeed full of understanding that these people who are hitting me, torturing me, beating me, drilling holes in me, they are indeed doing it against their better judgment. They are doing it against their own will. They're doing it as puppets in the hands of the puppet master who is God. That it is indeed God who is doing it. And God has a purpose behind it. And therefore, I tolerate it by accepting and surrendering to God. Before 2000, just before 2000, this millennium, somebody asked me in a lecture that my guru has told me to put his picture on the altar. Should I do that? I said, certainly, why not? If you can see God through the window of your spiritual teacher, why can't you put his picture on the altar? But I said we are entering into the new millennium, where everybody wants everything fast. People don't want filter coffee, they want instant coffee. They don't want regular dinners, they want TV dinners. They don't want to cook, they want to get from Swiggy and Zomato. So for such people, I would suggest that on the altar, next to the image of Krishna, please keep the image of this one person at least. You may have many more. It's one person who presses all the wrong buttons that charge up all the wrong emotions. Everybody in their life has God's gift of at least one person who is pressing the wrong buttons and causing irritation, anger, and so on and so forth. Who's creating fear, who's creating depression, or whom you imagine is creating all this thing. So therefore, you put his picture on the altar. Somebody told me, sir, I will have to put a whole cricket team on the altar. Well, if that's the case, put the whole cricket team on the altar. And when you pray to Krishna, you please pray that, hey, Krishna, I know that this person doesn't want to do what he or she is doing, but I know you are acting through this person in order to teach me something. Please, Bhagavan, please, Krishna, please guide me what you are trying to teach me through this person. So if you do this, you see God lies in every human heart. And if you can see God in the heart of at least one person, you've begun the process to reaching God. That's why they say, at least learn to see God in your Guru's heart. But I say that learn to see God in the heart of your enemy. Because if you can learn to see God in the heart of your enemy, surely you will see God in every human. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sa cha me na pranashyati. So the first principle is that Bhakti Yoga is not about denying emotion. Bhakti Yoga is not about working yourself to death so that you don't have any emotion, strength for any emotion. It is not about suppressing or denying emotion. Indeed, suppressing and denying emotions makes them worse. Because if you suppress emotions, other emotions come up. For example, if you're angry with somebody all the time, either in your office or your home, and you can't express that anger, there is a short circuit because in the brain, the center for anger and fear are close together. So through suppression of anger, you could get panic attacks. So you could get panic attacks by suppressing your anger. Don't suppress. Instead, direct your anger towards God. Direct your frustration towards God. Pray to God and God will reply to you. For if you speak to Him incessantly, then indeed God will also respond to you. So therefore, if you can learn to see God in the hearts of people around you, you will be happy and blissful because you will understand that what is happening is happening. But it's not that you don't do anything. If God has given you control over the situation, you act because that is what Krishna wants you to do. But if it is beyond your control, it is outside the circle of your control, then let it be outside the circle of your concern. Leave it to Him. So direct all your emotions towards God. You are worried about something, please pray to God and express your worry to Him. You're angry with someone, please pray to God and express your anger with Him. Whatever you are experiencing which is disturbing you, whatever you're experiencing which is enhancing you, whatever is actually making you blissful and happy, please direct it to God. Your emotions, when they're directed to God, connect you with God. And when you're connected with God, you will automatically become less and less tortured by your emotion. So today I wanted to discuss that the path towards understanding what happens on the Bhakti-Yoga, Brahma-bhuta moksha, and Para-Bhakti begins with understanding what emotion is and then goes on to directing your emotions towards God, which is the path of Bhakti-Yoga. Beyond this, we will discuss the next time. If you have any queries or questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask. Yes, Chanakya, your computer is working enough to repeat the questions that people have put up or not? So next time we will cover what it means to transcend emotion. How can one reach that place of peace? How can we reach that place where we are no longer tortured by emotion? How on this spiritual path we can move from expressing our emotions to God to transcending emotion altogether. Hari Om, Jai Shri Krishna, Hari